Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, folks, for this episode here today, what we're going to be talking about is secret weapons. Now, what exactly is a secret weapon in regards to the Detroit Lions? It's kind of hard to try and figure that out because, well, when it comes to the Detroit Lions, they have no shortage of known weapons. Doesn't matter where you look on this team. You can look at Goff, you can look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, you can look at Gibbs, you can look at J-Mo, you can look at Laporta, Branch, Kirby, Hutch, DJ Reed, Aleem McNeil, Jack Campbell. I mean, you can look just about damn near anywhere. I mean, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a known weapon for the Detroit Lions. The Lions are one of the most talented teams in the NFL, and they sport a depth chart that is among the deepest in the league. So the Lions are known around the league of having a deep arsenal of weapons. But what most people have forgotten about when we talk about the Detroit Lions is the secret weapons that I'm referring to that the Lions have that have been overlooked. Now, I'm not saying they've been overlooked because they're not important, but everybody focuses on everything else. Everyone focuses on the players. Everyone focuses on those that are in the direct limelight. Everyone focuses on those that get the spotlight. So these secret weapons that I'm referring to, they're not often thought about. So the question then becomes, who am I referring to? Who are these secret weapons that I'm speaking about? The ones that I'm speaking about are pass game coordinator David Shaw and defensive line and defensive run game coordinator Casey Rogers. These are the two guys that, in my honest opinion, are the secret weapons that separate the Detroit Lions from virtually all the rest of the competition. But why are these guys secret weapons? What makes them so special or different than other coaches? Well, the answer to that question is based upon what they've done in the past and also what they themselves bring to the table as coaches. Both of these guys have long histories of coaching in either both the college ranks exclusively or in the NFL ranks. These are guys that have a lot of experience in what they do as far as coaching, but also not only just coaching in terms of producing top results with the teams that they coach from top talent that they have available. Now let's dive into this, because I'm going to tell you this right now. This is a really, really interesting, conversation for me. Let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. I like to talk about the offense quite a bit, but let's talk about the defensive guy. Let's talk about Casey Rogers. Casey Rogers is a guy that, I'm going to tell you this right now. The fact that the Lions were able to hire him, were able to pull him away from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is probably one of the best offseason moves that they made this entire offseason. This is a guy that's going into 19 seasons. This is his 19th year as an NFL head coach, as an NFL coach, where he has been primarily either the defensive line coach or the run game coordinator or the defensive coordinator. This is a guy that brings a lot of experience to the job as to what he is about to do for the Detroit Lions. And not only does he have a lot of experience, Rodgers has an impressive resume in being able to stop opposing NFL offenses from running the ball. If you take a look at Casey Rogers' 19 years where he's been either, as I said, a primary defensive line coach, a run game coordinator, or a defensive coordinator on the defense, 14 out of those 19 years, Rogers' run defenses were either ranked 10th or higher in either total rush yards given up or the rush average given up, or both. And let's understand something here. Over those 19 years that I'm talking about, this is spanning over 4 different ball clubs. This is spanning the Cowboys, the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Bucks. And as I had up on the screen just there a moment ago, you're talking about a guy that almost every single year that he has been coaching in one of those capacities, he's been able to stop the run almost at whim. And you have to think about it. I don't know if you all paid attention very closely when I had it up there on the screen. There were times that he came into a team, and the previous year, their rush defense was terrible. In 2008, the Dolphins had the 10th best rush defense in terms of running yards given up. The previous year in 2007, they were dead last in the league. Dead last. That is a massive jump to go from 32nd all the way up to 10th. Don't tell me that had nothing to do with Casey Rogers being there. And then it happened again in 2019 when he joined the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In 2019, they were number 1 against the run in both rush yards given up and also in rush average. Technically, they were tied first in rush average given up, but still, I mean, at that point, you're splitting hairs. But think about this. The year prior, in 2018, the Bucs were 24th against the rush in total yards given up, and they were tied 20th in rush average given up. So 2 times, Casey Rogers has come into a previous ball club where the previous year before he got there, the rush defense was not all that good. And then the very next year, they're either top 10 or they're the best rush defense in the NFL. Methinks that's a coincidence. Methinks that is a trend. Methinks that's good for the Lions. And the reason why this is important to bring up is because let's understand something here. The Lions last year were a top 5 defense in rush yards given up. They were a damn good rush defense given up in terms of yards given up, total yards given up. And this is important because the last time that Rodgers inherited a top rush defense, he got that team along, obviously with others, he got that team to the Super Bowl. Because let's think about this. When he took over for the Buccaneers in 2019, he made that into a top rush defense. The very next year, in 2020, they go to the Super Bowl. And you want to know what's interesting about that? When they got to the Super Bowl, that's the year that the Bucs absolutely destroyed the Kansas City Chiefs. You go back to that game, the Bucs held the Chiefs' lead rusher to less than 70 yards rushing the ball, and on top of that, they sacked Mahomes 3 times in that 31-9 rout. That is important for also a second reason, because when you go back to 2023, when the Lions nearly got to the Super Bowl that year, they had the second best rush defense in terms of total rushing yards given up, and they were the 3rd best rush defense in terms of rush average given up. So there is a clear correlation, there is a clear connection that exists in winning Super Bowls with being able to stop the run. And Casey Rogers has an impeccable record of joining one of the best rush defenses in the NFL to make that happen. But it's not just his ability to stop the rush. It's also his ability to get after the quarterback. Because you have to consider that not only does he have great experience in terms of stopping the run, he also has great experience in getting after quarterbacks, either pressuring them or sacking them. But in this case, I'm just going to go specifically with sacks. if you take a look, again, at the 19 years that I'm talking about, his defensive line in 12 of those 19 years ranked top 10 or higher in terms of garnering sacks. Again, I'll put it up on the screen. And again, just like I brought up with the run yards and the rushing yards and rush average total that was given up the year prior, in 2008, they were 8th in sacks when Rodgers got there that year. The previous year in 2007, they were ranked 24th. Again, that goes back to the Dolphins. In 2019, when he joined the Bucs for the first year, they were tied 7th in sacks. The year prior, in 2018, they were tied 19th in sacks. So again, there is a clear correlation, there is a clear connection that shows when Casey Rodgers joins a unit, he gets that unit to excel way better than what it did the previous year. That ought to excite the ever-living hell out of not only the Lions, which I know it definitely does, but it better excite the hell out of Lions fans more so than when we just got him a couple of months ago. Because the more you actually delve into the research, the more you actually look at the stats, the more enticing and exciting this absolutely gets. And you have to think about it also from this perspective. As I said, Casey Rodgers was a defensive coordinator for a number of years. This was a guy who, if I recall correctly, was the defensive coordinator of the Jets from 2015 to 2018. So this is a guy that knows also how to call plays. Well, take a wild guess who that's going to benefit. That's going to benefit Kelvin Shepherd because, don't get me wrong, as much as I'm excited, as much as I have immense confidence in Kelvin Shepherd's ability to lead and call plays on this defense, having every bit of help is going to be beneficial for him. And what better resource, what better tool to look towards to gain a little bit more of an edge, to gain a little bit more help and knowledge and insight than a guy who has worked under some of the best NFL defensive-minded coaches over the last, 20-something years. Because here's the thing, when he was in Tampa Bay, he worked under Todd Bowles. When he was in New York, he worked under Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles is considered one of the best defensive-minded head coaches in the entirety of the NFL. And when he was in Dallas back in the early in the early part of his career, in the mid-2000s, that's right, he was working underneath Bill Parcells, which that also is a good connection for the Lions because, that's right, Dan Campbell gets his coaching roots, his coaching background from Bill Parcells as well. So what you have there is you have a group of guys that work on the same wavelength. You have a group of guys that have a very similar mindset about how to attack opposing teams. And in this case, specifically, the opposing offenses. So, it is abundantly clear that Casey Rodgers' mere presence to a defense is going to bring that defense to another level. Which, let's think about it here. This defense last year was absolutely just destroyed in terms of injuries, but yet it was still a top 10 unit. You add a guy like Casey Rodgers with all of his knowledge and all his background to this defense, imagine what he could do with a fully healthy defense. Just think about that one for a minute. Now, having gone on about Casey Rodgers for quite a bit, let's talk about David Shaw. Now, David Shaw, his coaching background is equally as impressive as Casey Rodgers, albeit most of his background comes from college. But that should not discourage people from thinking that David Shaw is not a secret weapon. Au contraire. David Shaw specifically stated back in his lone media session, a couple of months ago, that when he was the head coach of Stanford, he wasn't basing his offense off of college tactics. He would use NFL pro-style offensive concepts for his offense. And he specifically stated that when it was the offseason, he wasn't watching college film. He was actually watching, NFL game film. That was how he built his offenses back when he was at Stanford. And this is important because if you go back to when, David Shaw was the head coach or the offensive coordinator of Stanford while he was underneath Jim Harbaugh, David Shaw was able to produce 4 top 25 offenses, either as the offense coordinator or as the head coach. And it's important to note that the ability to do that in college is rather damn difficult. It's not like in the NFL where you can sign players to year-long contracts. In college, you might get a player for a year or two before they decide to hit the transfer portal. It's much harder now in college ranks to actually keep a player all 4 years through a college, actual career. And especially it's more difficult when you consider the fact that Stanford has one of the most rigorous academic programs in the entirety of the United States. But yet, what's even more impressive about David Shaw is the fact that while he was at Stanford, he had 4 conference championships of the Pac-12, also while having a 5-3 bowl record, and on top of that, he had 6 top 20 season rankings from the Associated Press, with 3 of those 6 being in the top 10. So this is a guy that clearly knows how to lead men and clearly knows how to run offenses. But perhaps the greatest accomplishment that David Shaw has is the amount of draft picks that his program churned out during his time as the head coach at Stanford. During his tenure, David Shaw produced 23 top 100 draft picks. He had 6 in the first round, he had 7 in the second round, and he had 10 in the third round. And again, all of them top 100, so pick 100 or earlier. But, much as I mentioned with Casey Rogers earlier, David Shaw has had some great coaches to learn from. He's had some great mentorship as well. Like I said, Casey Rogers has worked under Todd Bowles and under Bill Parcells. David Shaw, on the other hand, has worked, as I said, under Jim Harbaugh, but he's also worked under and also played for the legend himself, Bill Walsh. This is a guy who has some of the best overall knowledge that you could probably get from an offensive-minded coach. Name me a coach right now in the NFL that likely has had, the ability to say that he both played for and also coached under Bill Walsh. There are still a couple of coaches in the NFL right now that can say, yeah, I either coached with or under Bill Walsh. There's probably a few. But to actually say they played for the man and coached under him or were mentored by him as a coach, that's a different story. So the amount of experience and the depth of knowledge that both David Shaw and also Casey Rogers bring to their respective units and to the overall organization of the Detroit Lions, it is a distinct edge over virtually any team and coaching staff in the NFL. And you have to think about it further from this perspective. When you honestly think about some of the teams that have won Super Bowls, and not just a Super Bowl, I'm talking about multiple Super Bowls, they've had some pretty damn good coaches along the way. Oh sure, they've got great players. A lot of those players go into the Hall of Fame. But they also have good coaches. And to think about it in this perspective, the Lions have some of the most experienced, some of the most intelligent coaches in terms of offensive and defensive concepts to lend to the Lions this year, on top of the fact that they've already got all the damn talent that they have. That right there is a secret weapon. Because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, we know all about these weapons that the Lions have. Like I said, all those names earlier on of the players. But when you have coaches like Shaw and like Rogers who work behind the scenes that don't necessarily get all that limelight, but yet they can be putting a whole bunch of information out there to their entire unit or to potentially an entire offense or defense, that knowledge is invaluable. And that knowledge goes a long way to helping players go further than where they used to be. Now, obviously, it's up to the players to take that knowledge, to take that practice, and to put it into actual reality. The players still have to do an immense amount of work. But the coaches help in that regard by allowing them to say, hey, I've seen everything that I've seen, and here's a way to get even better that much faster. And when you think about all the guys that I just mentioned in, the very beginning of this episode, there are very, 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 very few teams that host the amount of overall talent that the Lions have. Then plus on top of that, the coaches that we have. And again, let me remind you of this. This is after losing coaches that we had last year that everybody thought that was going to be our downfall. I'm telling you this right now. We didn't get worse in terms of coaching this year. We got better, which for a team that lost as many coaches as it did, that's a rarity. So believe me when I tell you this. These two guys are going to have an immense amount of impact on both the offense and the defense this upcoming season. Mark it down, bet it. It's going to be the case. But anyway, folks, I just wanted to put this episode out there. Again, the more I think on things, the more I'm able to find new information, new angles to talk about stuff. So having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I hope you all enjoyed the content. If you did, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to subscribe if you have not done so already. And I also highly encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also, I hope you all are having a great day out there. Hope you got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.